Falcons are signing Kirk Cousins to a 4-year deal. It's worth about 180 million. Cousins deal is worth 180 million, 45 million per season, including 100 million guaranteed. Bryce, please explain to me why the Atlanta Falcons just allotted this type of money for a guy like Kirk Cousins who has one career playoff win against my Saints.
I'm dead. Yeah. So obviously, for a lot of people who don't know, even from the other thing, from many things I do, I also cover Falcons too. So obviously, this was the big question: fan base split. You know how it goes,
right?
So this was my take on it. Right, the Falcons signing Kirk Cousins says one thing: they want to win the Super Bowl this year. They are going all in. If you try to trade up, there's no guarantee Caleb Williams, Drake Mayer, Jane Daniels are going to be good enough to get you a Super Bowl. There's just you can't say there is because the rookies, you have no idea. And then to me, this also shows me that they don't believe in Justin Fields is good enough to get them there too.
Correct.
And I also think too, you have Arthur Blank, who is 82, I believe. He's maybe going to give his team franchise to his son. Listen, I don't wish this on him. He may croak. We don't know.
Right.
He wants to win a Super Bowl before he dies. He told Terry and he told Raheem, get a veteran quarterback who can get us there. Because we can't do the young quarterback thing if we're trying to win now.
Yeah, they're scarred by
that. 49ers tried to do that with Trey Lance, and we saw what happened.
Yep.
So they said, go get Kurt. Now, I know a lot of people are looking at the playoff record with Kurt, 1-3. Yes, he has not won the playoffs. Now, everything I always like to say is context. If you think about his record, I think someone posted a stat. I want to say that his team's defenses in those games gave up an average of like 28 to 31 points a game. If that means he's in shootouts in playoff games, because his numbers, I think he had like 7 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. From a numbers perspective, it was fine. It's not like he's played bad in those games.
Yeah,
it's just his team has let him down in those games, and so there's context to that. Kirk Cousins has shown he can get the ball to his weapons. That's one of the big things they want to do, maximize the weapons, because that's one of the big issues. Bijan, Pitts, Drake have not been maximized under Arthur Smith and under the quarterbacks they've had, Ritter and Mariota and Heineke. Kirk Cousins has shown he can get it to him. There's a reason why we think Jettis is one of the best receivers in the game. He wouldn't be considered that if he didn't get the ball. And so he's going to get the ball to the playmakers, maximize that. He is a guy who, before he got hurt last year, I believe he played 8-9 games. Can't remember exactly the number, but he had 18 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. He was playing good ball before he got hurt.
Led the league in touchdowns, second in passing yards when he got hurt in week 8.
Exactly. So it's one of those things where I think they look at Zach Robinson coming in from Sean McVay's system. You had a quarterback similar to him in LA with Matthew Stafford. Maybe not the same arm talent, but basically pocket quarterbacks. You saw how that's worked for Matthew Stafford. People forget when Matthew Stafford was traded to the Rams. People still thought he's not that good. He didn't win in Detroit. Right. And everybody was like, okay, give him better coach, give him better system, give him better franchise. And you saw they won a Super Bowl. And I think this is what they're looking at with Kurt. He's probably going to have the best team he's ever had this year, especially with the other additions that are probably going to make to this roster. This will probably be the best roster that they've ever had. People are projecting the Falcons win the NFC South now. He's won games. I don't think it's about winning regular season games. The Falcons are probably going to win the amount of games they need to do in the playoffs. It's about getting to the Super Bowl, winning, maximizing their weapons. Raheem Morris understands that they have to be aggressive and they have to make that push. And there is nobody else on the market who could have done this for him. There just wasn't. And so you have to make this move because there's no point of trading the farm, trading your next two draft classes away for a potential quarterback, and then he ends up being a bust. That's going to get you fired right there. Kirk Cousins is essentially on a 2-year deal because they can let him go after the 3rd year because he only counts $10 million as the cap his 3rd year. So this is a 2-year deal. Try to win a chip and see what happens. And that way, that also can leave you in a good position because people also don't remember this. Got to pay Drake London in a couple of years.
Yes,
his contract's coming up.
Oh,
Bijan's going to come up in a few years.
Yep.
If Kirk Cousins in 2 years, if they decide to move off of him, now you're going to have money again to pay those guys and still keep your roster constructed. That's going to be the key. This is actually a very smart financial decision for the Falcons because if they did it over the 4 years, you're going to have to say, we're going to have to let one of them walk because we don't have the money. In 2 years, that's when you really got to start shoving out those deals.
Yep.
So that'll help them. And so I think Kirk Cousins is, I like to say, boring. He's not someone who's like, oh, Kirk Cousins.
Right.
But at the end of the day, he has won games in this league. He has won the divisions in this league. He can't put up great numbers. That's what they need from him because they need just better quarterback play. And listen, coming off the Achilles, it's a risk, but it's a risk you got to take if you're going to try to compete this year and stop being a team that has the talent, but just doesn't have the quarterback to get them over the top.
Yep. I want to piggyback off that Achilles comment there too, because the money for a guy coming off an Achilles injury, you're never the same after the Achilles injury. I mean, I don't care who you are. We saw it with plenty of NBA athletes. We've seen it with NFL athletes as well. And that Achilles injury has unfortunately started to become a little more common as the seasons have went on. Before Kirk Cousins suffered that Week 8 Achilles injury, which again he was first in passing touchdowns with 28 and second in the NFL in passing yards at about 2,850, I believe 2,900. Kirk Cousins had played in 136 of a possible 138 games. He missed 2 games, one where Minnesota rested their starters, and another one where he tested positive for COVID-19 in 2021. So Kirk Cousins has been one of the most durable quarterbacks in the NFL really over the span of his career. And when we talk about the money aspect as well, he's also pretty damn good at making money as well. He just signed a $180 million deal with the Falcons, which, like you said, is about a 2-year deal. Realistically, they can get out of it after the 3rd year. And that's a very good point as well. The fact that they're going to have to look at Kyle Pitt's 5th-year option coming up. Drake London still got a couple years. Bijan Robinson will probably going to get paid the year after Drake. So they've got some paydays coming up for sure. But Kirk has made $231 million in his career so far. By the time he's done with Atlanta, he'll have over $300 million that he's made in the NFL. He's actually on track to be among the 3 highest paid players in NFL history, and all of this amounting for 1 playoff win. So that's where it kind of starts to bother me, and when you look at the yearly cash of Kirk Cousins, in year 1, he's getting paid 62 and a half. I don't care what you say, whether it's a signing bonus, whether it's a base salary, whether it's guarantees, whatever. Kirk Cousins with a 1-3 playoff record is getting paid $62.5 million in this first year of the deal. It does fall drastically by about $35 million to $27.5, and then in the 3rd year before they can get out, it'll be $45 million bucks. But if they have that potential out in 2027, he'll still have played 3 years, made $135 million, and they'll only have about 12 and a half in dead cap. So while I do agree it was a smart decision because of the talent that they have coming up to pay, I still don't like the money, Bryce. I don't at all. And what this tells me is that we know Kirk Cousins was, at this point, I would have put him above Russell Wilson because of what we've seen out of Russ the past 2 years and what we've seen out of Kirk. What have you done for me lately? If you're talking about in the grand scheme of things, I think a lot of people, if not most people, would take Russ over Kirk. Super Bowl winner, back-to-back Super Bowl appearances. We know what Russ was capable of and what he does at the peak of his game. But what this tells me is Kirk Cousins probably had a good bit of suitors, and rightfully so. So Atlanta had to come in with the bag to convince him that this was the place. In another great point, he probably is going to be on his best team with a Bijan, with a Kyle Pitts, with a Drake London. You got Tyler Algier. You got a solid defense behind you that was solid for Atlanta last year, and we're going to see how they continue to build on it. They do lose Jeff Okudah, but I don't think he's too much of a loss. He didn't play too much. They're still rocking Jesse Bates, AJ Terrell, a good bit of players that they swiped from the Saints last year in the offseason. I had a lot to say about the Falcons and the moves they made for their defense last year. But the fact that he's got $100 million guaranteed, it's just too much for me. $100 million guaranteed, $50 million at signing, and $90 million guaranteed over the first 2 years. Now, I think his $50 million at signing is broken out to, I think, 12.5 over 4 years of the contract, but it's that $62.5 million in that first year that really is an eye popper to me. I know the Falcons had some money to spend, but it's also, like you said, Atlanta needs a good distributor of the football. I believe when you look at this, it's a Matt Ryan 2.0 situation. Everybody was jonesing for Matt Ryan to get out of town. Oh yeah, 2016 MVP, took us to the Super Bowl. We lost. They're going to blame it on Matt. They're going to blame it on Kyle. But Matt Ryan was consistently, a lot like Kirk Cousins, a top 10 to 12 quarterback in this league. Yes, he wasn't flashy. Yes, he wasn't sexy, but he was delivering the ball. He was, fairly good pre-snap. And he was a veteran in the league. I mean, he won an MVP for a reason. Matt Ryan, far and away, barring it being under Kyle Shanahan's number 1 offense, was an MVP in 2016. And he played very, very well. And they've missed that. Matt Ryan leaves. They fail to pursue Deshaun Watson. It's the Marcus Mariota, Taylor Heineke, Desmond Ridder show. And they're just not able to muster a simple distributor of the football when you have all this talent on the team. But with you, following the Falcons so closely, and obviously I'll chime in on the question as well, did you want to see another option at QB1 for the Falcons? Because you are right. Justin Fields, kind of a question mark. As much as I love him, he still has some things to prove. And it would be a shaky situation coming over to Atlanta just because of what Justin Fields has done before. Obviously, Russell Wilson got away. It's always a risk to draft a quarterback. Did you want to see another option for QB1 at Atlanta, or maybe was there a better solution for it?
I was definitely one of the people at first in the process that I would have loved to maybe get a guy like Jane Daniels or a guy
Yeah.
like, or even give Justin Fields a chance, because I just felt like I was looking at from a balance perspective. You trade for Justin Fields, probably doesn't cost you a lot of compensation. You don't have to pay him a lot this year. It's really his 5th-year option where that takes the pay bump. So
Right.
you're able to keep cap, don't have to give up a lot, still can do a lot more with the roster. And then obviously if Falcons had a worse record, or if there was a team in the top 3 that didn't need a quarterback, obviously I just think again Jaden would have been a great fit for the Falcons and things like that. And we can get into the city and everything like that. But I think those would have been 2 options that I would have looked into. But like I said, I mean, Kirk Cousins also, one thing about him is that he does provide stability.
Yes,
And that's something they haven't had
I
the
think the
last 2 years.
Falcons are missing that.
That they had was with Matt was stability. And that's what Kurt will provide. He's a guy who relatively outside of the Achilles injury is healthy. It's gonna, you know what you're gonna get from him. And I think that's ultimately what they wanted realistically amongst all of it, just because they didn't want to have, because the thing with Justin Fields was if you trade for him and he doesn't take that leap that you need him to take.
Oh yeah,
Now
he's got to do it in year one.
Back. Yeah, exactly. Now you're right back where you started. If you draft a quarterback, well, you're trying to win. So, what if the quarterback doesn't develop fast enough? There was just, it's interesting because the Falcons coaching staff, they have like 3 quarterback coaches, a passing coordinator, and offensive coordinator. And you would think, why do they need that many quarterback coaches for Kirk Cousins? It felt like the system that they were putting in place for quarterbacks was meant for a rookie or a Justin Fields potentially. And listen, even with the draft of the signing of Kirk Cousins, the question is opened up. Do the Falcons still draft a quarterback in day 3 or day 2? Do they still, okay, if Kirk Cousins really might be a 2-year plan, do we start to get a guy? Then you start looking at guys like Spencer Rattler, Bo Nix, potentially as guys that you could go after potentially. So it's one of those things where if you look at it that way, that also helps provide flexibility, because now it's okay. We could get our guy, try to compete, have a guy behind him. I know also Michael Phoenix is another guy that some people were talking about.
Yes.
So it's one of those things where I get what people are saying and why the money seems rich, but at the end of the day, too, with the money, people always, I feel like, don't always kind of overlook it a little bit.
Right.
What he got paid is what starting quarterbacks get paid in this league in terms
Basically
of quarterbacks that you expect to get you there. Like at the end of the day, like I think he's the 7th highest paid, 8th highest paid quarterback in the game.
Yep.
It's not like he's top 5.
36 years old.
Yeah, he's not like he's top 5. So this is the money. Like, is if you have a great year, you're now in line to get 130 million. Baker had one good year. Boom. 115
million. Yep.
So that, and he doesn't probably have the same track record that Kirk has, just in terms of the quarterback position. So that at the end of the day, this is what you give up for guys. I mean, listen, when y'all signed Derek Carr, I mean, y'all had to pay him a pretty penny to bring him in. Like that, that's just, regardless of what you think about Derek Carr, that is what a starting quarterback goes for. All right. Now, I don't want to poke fun. Falcons fans say y'all basically signed expensive Desmond Ridder, but that's a different story.
You're right.
For another day.
You're right.
But that's how it is. So it's tough, but there's so much money in the game now.
Yeah.
That's
with
what
the salary cap going up too, high as it's ever been, most it's ever went up.
Yep. So.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And, I tell myself this all the time, and I think I just finally need to stick to what I'm saying, like, it's just if you're not in the tops of the league, like top 5 or 6, consensus or production or wins or going deep in the playoffs with talent, like, maybe outside of Brock Purdy, and hell, Brock might get 35 or 40 million a year now, once the time comes. I mean, they got a lot of people to pay in San Francisco and a lot of talent to maneuver, but still, like, quarterbacks get paid what they're paid. If Baker Mayfield can go out and basically make 33 million a year off of, his second or third best career year, maybe his best career year in Tampa, winning winning the division, winning a playoff game, and Daniel Jones can get 40. That's really where it messed it up. Like Daniel Jones got 40, and then everybody else was falling in line, because with Kirk Cousins being the highest paid, I mean, he's above a Josh Allen, he's above a Patrick Mahomes, he's above a Trevor Lawrence. Trevor still's got to get paid, and but those deals are going to get reworked. They're probably going to get a huge bag down the road. I believe Josh Allen was signed 2, maybe 3 seasons ago. Of course, Mahomes' deal is probably going to get revisited now, him being a 3-time champion versus when he had just won his first one. And the Chiefs were like, here's $500 million in a decade's worth of commitment. And of course, nobody would scoff at that. I think Russell Wilson would have been nice. I think a veteran presence to distribute that football like they brought in with Kirk Cousins would be sweet. Kirk's not going to give you a whole lot of mobility. I believe Russ is, a sharper, more in tune guy with pre-snap and post-snap than Kirk Cousins is, but some people might come back and, say no because of the last 2 years that we've seen out of Russell Wilson. And like you said, I understand why they didn't pull the trigger on Justin Fields as much as I would have liked to seen it. Would Raheem Morris have been able to get a hold of that? Would the quarterback's coach, would Zach Robinson be able to actually have that effect on Justin Fields? And, I thought Atlanta with having the 8th pick, like, man, they could totally get into maybe the top 2 or top 3. And, with the money they have to spend, with the draft capital that they've got, like, go and chase a Jaden Daniels, maybe a Michael Penix if they wanted to take him that high. They could still maybe take Michael Penix at number 8. I don't see Penix on a lot of first-round boards, or really, if any, but I believe he's a first-round quarterback. There was a reason that guy played so well for Washington under Kalen DeBoer, got to the national championship, and he was just outmatched by the best defense and the best run game in the country that not only stifled him, but kept him off the field. But it's always risky to draft a rookie quarterback, right? You don't know what you're getting. The speed of the game is going to get to them. That's their first year in the league. But in the same breath, like, the Falcons also know what Kirk Cousins is, and that's kind of a double-edged sword. He's going to distribute the football for you. He's going to be solid, but he's still a 78, 70, and 2 career record guy. 1 playoff win against the Saints. He struggles in prime time. We saw him kind of get better with that, but we only saw half a season of him. But we know that he's going to probably put up that 4,000, maybe 42, 4,300 yards. He can get you 30 passing touchdowns. He can not turn the ball over a lot. And that's what Atlanta really needs. So how far do you think Kirk Cousins is going to take Falcons in the first year? Or maybe even if you want to look at a bird's eye view, if you want to look into the next 2-3 years, what do you think Kirk does in terms of maybe a record and playoff depth for the Atlanta Falcons now?
It's an interesting question, because you really don't really know. Because like I said, there's still beginning free agency, still moves to be made. They did get Darnell Mooney today. Got to add to that receiving core. They could potentially go Malik Neighbors at 8. That could, because Minnesota had weapons, receiving weapons, and the Falcons want to replicate that here in Atlanta, because what he can do with them. So I think overall, it feels like this team, the way it's trending, should win the division. They should be favorites, and you probably think you can maybe be an 11-win team, maybe 12, depending. They have a tougher schedule this year, so it'll be interesting to see how they maneuver that. But I think 11, 12 wins. If you get lucky, you can maybe creep into 13. Now you're talking maybe potential number 1, number 2 seed.
Oh wow,
in the NFC.
12 or 13.
It feels like it feels like with this move, you kind of feel like, all right, you got to make the NFC Championship game. You're not just trying to get into the playoffs. You're trying to win a couple of games in the playoffs and take that next step. You know what I'm saying? Yep. So I think that's where the expectation should be. I think that there's no other expectation there can be, is that you're taking that step. And the NFC is not he's not playing Mahomes and all them. Right? I mean, if you look at the NFC last year, the quarterback who came out was Brock Purdy. 49ers have a really good roster, but Brock Purdy wasn't a world beater last year.
Right.
It was just a battle. The 49ers had one of the best rosters in the game, and that helped him. So if the Falcons feel like they can get their roster on par with those teams, some people will probably maybe take Kirk Cousins over Brock Purdy in that situation, just because of the fact that, if you look at the two guys just from a talent perspective, Brock Purdy, we know the questions that have been asked about him. Kirk Cousins, we know about the questions he's been asked about in prime time. But all you need for any playoff run is you just need to play 2-3 good games.
Yep.
You just got to get hot for a couple games. That's the one thing about play. That's the one thing.
Get healthy.
You just gotta play. He doesn't even have to play elite. With the talent that they should have, he just has to play well.
Right.
If he could just be well and don't make the big mistake, there's no reason why the Falcons maybe couldn't get there. And we'll see what the identity of this team is once we get into the season. Because like I said, you're probably gonna see something similar to what the Rams are doing. So what we've seen with the Rams is what they're now trying to do with Kirk Cousins. And
Mhm.
like I said, the Rams formula has won a Super Bowl.
It
Raheem
has.
Morris was there. He is taking a lot of that blueprint from what McVay and them did to
You're
Atlanta
right.
and saying, we're going to follow this model because this is one. Listen, they had a down year because, the Rams went like all in. So you're going to
Oh,
have a
yeah.
down year when you do that. But as soon as after that one down year, they were back in the postseason.
Yep.
Consistency, building a winner. You got your quarterback too. That's what they're hoping here with
Hell,
Kirk
didn't
Cousins.
they go to the divisional this year?
I
Yeah, against the
believe
Lions, right?
no.
Maybe?
Wait, I
I know the
think
Rams made the playoffs.
I think they lost in the first round though. I can't remember to who though.
Yeah.
I think the Lions beat Tampa Bay to get to the NFC Championship game.
Yeah.
So I think they lost I just can't remember who they played in the
Yeah.
first round.
I'm pulling it up here. They lost the wild card to the Lions 24 to
Yeah,
23. So they came close. Sorry, it was the wild card, not the
yeah.
divisional. But yeah, I remember them because it was the, Matt Stafford, Jared Goff type of revenge game. When I look at the Kirk Cousins situation with the Atlanta Falcons, I see about 9 to 10 wins on the schedule. I think 11 to 12 is a little generous. I want to see what Zach Robinson and Raheem Morris still out there. Excellent points by you. Also, talking about how they're going to bring that blue pin over. That scheme, that system won a Super Bowl, and ultimately that's what the Falcons are pushing towards. But for me, this isn't a needle mover. Like, yes, it's going to make them better, but I don't believe we're talking, divisional round, maybe NFC championship, because the Lions, the Niners, the Packers, like they're still there to play. The Cowboys are still there. The Eagles are still there. While I do believe Atlanta could be a top 7 seed in the NFC and, fight for the NFC South, I think the Saints and maybe even the Bucks are going to put up, some of a fight as well. But it's not a major needle mover for me. They basically get Matt Ryan back. I mean, he's 36 years old. He's getting a big contract. Not that Matt ever did get the huge contract, but they know what they're getting in Kirk Cousins. Really a comfort move from Atlanta because they remember how good Matt was at distributing the football.